Good morning. Welcome to Tip Off. Today starts what I really think is probably the best week of the year of Jazz basketball. Not sure the status on Chris Paul. We'll be heading to shoot around a little bit to find that out. But very interesting week. The Jazz have the Clippers coming up on tonight with Blake Griffin. The world champions Dallas Mavericks coming into town. Uh, should be a lot of fun to see that on Thursday. And then Ricky Rubio in Minnesota comes in Saturday. The Jazz are home all the way until we jump on a plane on Thursday to fly to Dallas. This is the longest stretch of the year that the team is home. The Jazz only have one other homestand for the rest of the year for more than 2 games into the last week of the year after this. So the schedule has been favorable. It's been pleasant for all the talk of it, and that's been an advantage, but Utah has certainly taken advantage. What a win in Denver the other night. That blew my mind. Who had this team going 8-2 after the loss in LA or Denver last time? Who had them going 7-1 after leaving San Antonio? Not I. Still trying to figure out what entirely has been going on and how this is happening. I've written a great deal about it, and I think to some extent, some of the Moneyball stuff we've talked about, I think is very, very legitimate on two levels. Right now, the Jazz are getting more than their money's worth out of Josh Howard and more than their money's worth out of Raja Bell. Josh Howard's a $1 million player. Raja's a $3 million player. The Jazz are getting great value out of those players. They're also getting great value out of Paul Millsap, obviously, right now. The other is defensively. They are allowing the fewest shots at the rim, and they are allowing a very low percentage of shots to come from three. The Jazz used to allow basically the highest percentage of possessions from three, and you just can't be successful doing that, and the Jazz have changed that. They're still fouling way too much. Some of that's playing Denver twice in this stretch. In that sense that Denver is the team that goes to the free throw line the most. In fact, in the last game against Denver, Denver got their shots where they might want to get them, but they just missed them. I thought what I loved about the Denver game, what I thought was the most impressive thing about the win against Denver, was the Jazz just pounded them. They slowed the game down, and they beat them up, and they pounded them. And I thought Denver wilted. I thought Denver just at one point along the way finally decided, all right, I'm not interested. I don't have in me the fight to get through this game. Side note on that, I would tell you that I really think the Jazz were helped out by Tim Tebow. That arena was as dead as I've ever heard an arena, partially because there was no flow to the game, and the Jazz slowed that game down the way they did. But the other thing I would tell you in that game is that what was so impressive or what was so obvious was that arena was dead, whether it was Friday night against Miami that was so raucous or the loss Saturday by the Broncos. The place was dead, and part of it was the Jazz took that away. Millsap has obviously been brilliant. Some of the numbers are crazy. I'll have them on the broadcast tonight. Actually, I'll put my prep sheet up online for you. As I always do. I don't know if any of you are interested in that, but I do put that up there, and there's no way, unfortunately, for me to monitor whether anyone's actually looking at it. So I would be curious if anyone is actually enjoying that. But Paul Millsap, last 4 games, 23 points, 9 rebounds, shooting 62%. Over the last 8 games, shooting 60%. Jazz are likely without Derek Favors, so a bigger burden on Cantor, and I'm not sure how Jeremy Evans gets into this game, so there may have to be a 3-big rotation and some bigger burdens, and Paul's really going to have to avoid foul trouble as thin as the Jazz are on their front line right now if Favors is unable to go. One other little note on statistical stuff. Gordon Hayward quietly is 5 of his last 11 from 3. That's just not enough to tell you anything has turned the corner or anything, but if he does, hit 2 of his next 4, then all of a sudden he's over 50% in a period of time, and I think you can start to believe that he's coming back. I think the biggest question on everybody's part is this legitimate? Well, there's nothing illegitimate about what they've done, and that win against Denver is certainly one that changes your perception. And as I'm trying to figure out what's going on, whether or not we can buy into this or not, I think defensively the improvement, uh, offensively they're okay. They're surviving without the three. Really, if you look at who they are right now, it comes across as this: they're average across the board in just about everything. They force the two things they do better. One thing they do better than average is they take care of the ball. They force turnovers a little better than average, and then the less thing they do less well is that they foul too much. And we just talked about that. They've got to rectify that. Otherwise, this team is just average across the board. Well, that's enough. Uh, that really might be enough if you are able to just be average across the board to be a playoff team. I'm not willing. I hope people aren't getting overly excited above that. The last night, Sunday, was a great win on the back end of a back-to-back, and I don't know if you realize it, but we have already played, I believe, six back-to-backs already. We played the Laker Denver to start. Philadelphia San Antonio was a back to back. New Orleans Houston was a back to back. Memphis Golden State was a back to back. Cleveland LA was a back to back. And New Jersey Denver was a back to back. Of our opening games, every single game has already been a back to back. We have not played. This will be our first, if I'm correct, sole standing game of the year. Where we do not play the next day and have the next day off. First time all year. Tonight, the Jazz play the Clippers, and then there's a gap. So the schedule really hits its apex of ease for Utah, and they've got to take advantage of it as well right about now. Those are the primary things I've got. Just I think Moneyball's working, defensive shots in the right place. Millsap is playing great, and maybe the most important thing, they're tough to play right now. No, they're playing physical. They're defending. I love the fact that Ty has slowed the game down. I think that's how you win in this league. I know everybody likes up tempo, but I don't think it works. And I think that those things are those are the key things to what's going on. And if they can continue to do that, the bench unit is good and physical and beats you up, and Cantor's really playing well, and Favors is a beast, and those things will allow them to continue to win in a lot of ways. And I think just winning games that you're supposed to, then sneaking some of those Denvers are vital. All right, few other notes for you around the NBA. Of various storylines, things going on. Orlando continues to play really, really well, which is, I think, worth noting on the whole Dwight Howard thing and how bad New Jersey looks. I find it almost impossible to imagine that Deron Williams is staying there. And maybe Brooklyn is a big enough appeal for Dwight Howard to leave Orlando and go to New Jersey, but I'm not entirely sure why Deron wouldn't find a way to leave New Jersey and go to Orlando. That team, at least if it's about winning, that team at least is built. I was very disappointed that everybody booed Deron. It's just, I don't know. Hey, it's your own choice. I will say the logic, I bought a ticket, I can do what I want, is the stupidest logic I've ever heard in my whole life. Just actually stand up for why you're doing what you're doing. The people who've tweeted to me and said, well, this is why I did it, I was like, okay, at least you have a reason. The asinine bullcrap of, I bought a ticket, I can do what I want. Great. Well, that logic actually doesn't work in any other setting, anywhere in the country, in any circumstance. So it doesn't really work in an arena either. To me, it's disappointing. I generally fine. There's definitely things about Deron's run that you can pick at and claim that there's some issue to. There's also 6 years of play where if this, we always argue that we want just effort. There's no question he gave effort for virtually the entire time. I mean, I think there was a little span there at the end where things got too big and it was a tough existence for him, and maybe he wilted a little bit under that. But frankly, he hasn't shot the ball well since then. That whole span, you just wonder whether that wrist is a problem. But I just was really disappointed in the booing. I thought it was I tipped my hat to Boston and LA the way they dealt with it. Sure, they won titles with their guy, but we've never won a title with anyone. So I'm not sure that that's our standard. I just was disappointed by it. I'll just say that. There's a level where taking the higher road and being classy and saying thank you has some value rather than just being petty and vindictive, which I always love to be, but that's kind of our running joke. Whether it's persecution complex that we just think everyone doesn't like us in Utah and they all want to go to a larger market and we're always bothered by it, whether it's Fisher or Boozer or now Deron. I don't know, but at some point we've got to take a higher road on some of these issues if we ever get another chance. It would be my quick take on that. you're welcome to disagree with me again, but I would tell you if your logic is, well, I bought a ticket, I can do what I want. No, actually, that's really that doesn't actually add up in any way, shape, or form. All right, you can send me questions by hashtagging Lock Tip Off. Um, KG Pogi, let me know what matchups you see the Jazz exploiting versus the Clippers. I think what the Jazz are exploiting each and every night is as the game develops, is somewhat of a bench unit, and when they can find the spots. Now, if Josh Howard's expected to go tonight without Derek Favors, I think you're a little less capable of doing those things. Blake Griffin is a terrible defensive player, and Paul Millsap will have that matchup, so I think Paul will be able to get going tonight. DeAndre Jordan is awfully long, and Al doesn't draw foul trouble, so I think that'll be a tough matchup. Reggie Evans comes into the game, and he's got a lot of tricks up his sleeve on the front court, and that will be a tough one for the Jazz to handle just because he can get under your skin. So keep an eye on that. Blake Griffin, I'm underwhelmed watching Blake Griffin right now, actually. I'm actually disappointed. I haven't seen in the games I've watched, so I'm going to rewatch. I watched part of their game last night. I'm going to watch a few more of them today, as that's kind of one of my preparation things to do. Coming from Devin Stalker, I'd love to hear your take on what the Jazz need to do to keep up this winning percentage. I don't think the Jazz can keep up this winning percentage, but maybe. I don't think they can. The schedule is just so brutal at different times. There's just losses that are built in. But what they're doing right now is, I would say the same things: depth, money ball defense, and then obviously Millsap has been brilliant the last few games. Can we please stop? By the way, with the other night in Denver shows that Paul Millsap can play 3. No, the other night shows that Paul Millsap can play 4. And that if the Jazz have a mobile defense around them, his lack of size may be able to be covered up at times. Now, that wasn't a team that could take advantage of him, but if you look at the last 2 nights with Millsap, they try to go small with Gallinari and Harrington. Harrington's actually defended some pretty big guys this year, and he killed them. And if you go a few nights before, Lakers tried to go big, and he beat them. So Paul is determined he can play 4. Can we stop with the idea that Paul Millsap can play 3, please? Please stop. Stop. Okay, that's enough. Harpering asked about Deron re-signing. Well, we eliminated that chance if there was one by the fans anyway. I mean, I'd never resign if I was him after that reaction, but he wasn't coming back anyway. I think Matt was playing. So anyway, and the whole a lot of questions about from Downright Dave and others about if Corbin could win Coach of the Year. Yes, Ron and I have actually off the air said that to each other and kind of brought up that concept of could you believe if that were to happen. So, but I'd have to say I think he's somewhat of representative. One thing I'm going to leave you with, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. Yesterday was Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. This book right here that I have in my hand, it's called A Testament of Hope. It's the essential writings and speeches and interviews of Dr. Martin Luther King. And if you have been inspired by it's big, it's 700 pages. It's got an amazing interview, actually, of all things he did with Playboy magazine. It's got a Meet the Press interview, some face-to-face stuff. It also has some of his writings and his books. Stride Toward Freedom was something he wrote. And then it has a letter to the Birmingham jail, a speech he wrote, a sermon he gave 6 days before the Supreme Court ruled on bus segregation. It's really deep into his philosophy. There's a piece called Our Struggle, which was an article he wrote about the Montgomery bus boycott that's really just fabulous. Maybe the best piece in this whole thing is called The Walk for Freedom, and that he writes about. So if you are inspired by that, that's of interest to you, again, it's called A Testament of Hope, and it's the essential writings of Dr. Martin Luther King. It's just fabulous. I was reading it last night. That's why it's on my desk, and trying to show it to the kids. 6-year-old daughter didn't quite get it. Anyway, hope you guys are good, and talk with you soon. Again, send your questions to #LockTipOff on Twitter. And see you tonight at the arena.